La Paz, Bolivia. 3,700 meters above sea level, the highest seat of government in the world. In the city in the Andes mountain gorge, besides politics, two things, and two things only rule: poverty and crime. Bolivia is the second poorest country in South America, the third largest cocaine producer in the world. Almost 50% of Bolivians live below the poverty line. Those who are even poor and/or criminals end up in La Paz, in this place. In San Pedro, in the forecourt to hell, in a city within a city, in the prison city. Perhaps the most unusual prison in the world, and certainly one of the toughest. This is San Pedro, a prison where no guards dare venture inside.
There are 20 of us and more than 2,000 of them.
Behind those walls, pure anarchy. A lawless place where only the strongest survive.
I am a murderer. I killed a cop.
Physical and psychological insanity.
I'm afraid of losing myself here.
Anything and everything is available in here.
We have all the drugs in here that you can get outside.
An absurd location. Between rapists, pedophiles, and drug addicts, countless women and children. This is San Pedro, one of the toughest prisons in the world. 7 o'clock in the morning. Hustle and bustle at the entrance of San Pedro. Although the prison city is considered hopelessly overcrowded, new criminals wash up against prison gates almost daily. Nobody goes in there voluntarily, because everybody knows that hell awaits behind these 18-meter-high walls. Carlos Gallegos knows as well. The reason for his incarceration: armed robbery. One at a time, Carlos and the other arrivals file past the prison guards.
I'm kind of scared, because I do not know what will happen to me. Although I've been in jail before, I was never in here. This is my first time here.
San Pedro is unlike any other prison in the world. Police officer Iban Quispe will be the last contact with any officials of the Bolivian executive for the newcomers for a long time. After this, it's every man for himself. Quispe is admitting 10 new prisoners today.
Do you have any tattoos?
No.
Tattoos can be an indication of gang membership. The police wants to at least know who comes in here. Mara Salvatrucha reigns in Bolivia, one of the most dangerous and notorious gangs in the world, with almost 100,000 members throughout Latin America. Final fingerprints. And mugshots. That's it. Police work is done. From now on, the prisoners take over.
My work is done here. Then he goes in there, the delegados will take over. They decide what happens to him.
The lords of the prisons, the so-called delegados, rule supreme in here. Everything, anytime. Just a few more meters through a confusing tunnel system, then it ends. The area of influence of the judiciary and police. After that, vigilantism rules. The world's toughest prison without guards inside. In San Pedro, the prisoners are left entirely to themselves. The state stays out of it. Unoccupied watchtowers. No guards, no police, nothing. Instead, prison bosses rise from the ranks of the prisoners. Murderers, violent criminals, and drug lords. They govern the 8 districts of San Pedro. They make sure that the completely dilapidated prison town here in the middle of the city, located in one of the best neighborhoods of La Paz, doesn't get completely out of hand. Within the walls, inmates move about freely. Junkies, rapists, and murderers, all together. It was back in 2002 that the government made the unusual decision to leave the prison and its inmates entirely to their own devices. Since then, the inmates take care of everything themselves. Government sells this as a progressive and integrative system. In reality, this dirt-poor country is just trying to save on prison costs. The state doesn't take care of anything anymore. The government has cast San Pedro aside. In plain terms, the inmates take care of everything. They cook their own meals, they build the cells, and try to keep the prison from falling apart completely, patching up as best they can what is in deep disrepair. A city within a city, full of outlaws. Women bring in the goods, bread, cocaine, and building materials. The prisoners rule supreme inside, and kings among thieves and murderers are the bosses. They alone determine who gets what, who lives where within these walls. An absurd and tough microcosm, abiding by its own rules and laws. For this is San Pedro, one of the toughest and most dangerous prisons in the world. Everybody knows it here. The new guys know it. Carlos knows it.
A little. What should I say? I'd have it easier someplace else. This place, this is just weird. Scary. Some of the other guys have already told me stories. I kind of know what to expect.
This isn't the first time in prison for Carlos, but it's the first time for him in San Pedro. On the outside, he's a tough guy. Only time will tell how tough he really is on the inside. Within the walls of San Pedro, a few meters more until that last gate, the gate to hell. The gate where police oversight ends and the rule of the delegados begins. A free man when he came in. Once the door closes behind him, Carlos is a free man no longer. He is a prisoner of San Pedro, a prison which no guard enters voluntarily. The prisoners rule behind bars, specifically the prison bosses, the so-called delegados. Victor Hugo Mendoza, a name every newbie would do well to remember, for he is the boss of all bosses here. Convicted of 4 murders, he is the head of the delegados.
Send over the disciplinas. Gather round and bring me the new guys.
Mendoza carefully takes in each newcomer. As prison king, he has the first word, and he has the last word.
The new one here is only a prisoner when I decide he's a prisoner. I explain the rules of conduct in this penitentiary. This helps avoid problems later on.
Problems that may not only make the newcomer's life difficult, but could make his survival here impossible. The delegados escort Carlos in, leading him up to the prison boss.
Is this the new man?
It's him, boss.
All right. Gallegos, Luis Carlos Augusto, listen to me carefully. These are the rules of this prison.
In this prison, the inmates make the rules themselves. And the most important thing here is, above all else, respect. Everybody listens to the delegados. In San Pedro, there are a total of 8 quarters. The bosses decide who lives where. Once you are assigned your quarter, it is impossible to change. Each quarter has a certain reputation. One quarter houses the ones who rule, the powerful. In another quarter, the fixers. Only if Carlos can scrape together enough money will he survive. His sleeping area, his food, everything has a price tag on it. Totally intimidated by now, the newcomer is too scared to ask any questions. The delegados assess him according to his crime, his age, his sentence. The boss gives the signal to take him away. Carlos himself has no idea what is going to happen to him. The delegados lead him down one of the many dark passages. Luis Carlos Augusto Gallego is from now under the rule of the highest-ranking criminal. This is the last time we can film him. A day later, Carlos is not allowed to talk to us anymore. His body is covered with bruises. How it happened and why, no one outside these walls will ever find out. San Pedro is probably the only prison in the world where the policemen and guards do not enter. In fact, the prison guards don't care what happens on the inside. An easy way to get by. He who sees nothing knows nothing. The power of the police force here does not extend beyond a 4-by-4-meter area. The area where visitors come in, show their IDs, are security checked and escorted through the door into the actual prison area. That's it. Police Chief Christian Sajines has been working here for 8 years now. As chief of police, he should have control of the entire prison, but San Pedro is different.
The delegados let us know if something has happened in the prison. They also determine the penalties for crimes. We act as an executive power only.
Sajines is pragmatic, frighteningly so.
There are 20 of us and 2,000 of them. 20 police officers for more than 2,000 prisoners. We're powerless. We can't do anything.
How helpless the police really are is documented by this video, filmed in 2014. It shows one of the worst riots. Riots like that happen all the time. All the police can do is watch and make sure the riots and unrest do not spread beyond the walls into the city.
There just aren't enough of us. The situation is intolerable. This concept was established many years ago. But at that time, there were fewer prisoners, and now circumstances have changed. I think that this here will end very badly. In the event of an emergency, we can do nothing.
An absurd microcosm, and a hopelessly outnumbered police chief. Power to the majority, power to the prisoners, especially the delegados, all convicted felons. Their favorite hangout? The parapet from which they can see over the entire prison area. These men are respected and feared at the same time, because when it comes down to it, it is they who decide over life and death. First and foremost, Victor Hugo Mendoza, who has climbed the ranks, from a quadruple murderer to prison boss. He rules through his delegados. One of them, Valentino Maiori. The distinguishing feature of delegados, black tracksuits. Each delegado is responsible for one of the quarters. If there are problems, they are supposed to intervene, but they also carry out administrative tasks of a certain kind.
Every prisoner has an entrance fee to pay. It's our job to get it.
Yes, it's true. Each prisoner pays to be here. The prison bosses require a kind of protection money, 150 Bolivianos or 21 US dollars. A lot of money in a country where the average income is $6.30 a day. That fee does not cover your sleeping area, though. Valentino himself lives on about 5 square meters. He was arrested for marijuana trafficking. He was a pothead and still is. Not a problem in San Pedro.
Drugs are everywhere. Anything you can get outside, you can get it in here too. The most popular drug by far, pasta basica de cocaína. Cocaine in its first stage, it's smoked.
y eso sirve para fumarlo.
Drugs, one of the biggest problems of San Pedro. Especially one quarter they call the drugs quarter, but honestly, drugs are everywhere in San Pedro. Approximately 60% of the inmates are drug addicts. They chew on coca leaves soaked in chemicals. They sniff crack or pure cocaine, smoke heroin or the infamous pasta básica de cocaína. Particularly popular because it's cheap, a byproduct of cocaine manufacture. The dangerous thing about it, in addition to psychosis and paranoia, it suppresses hunger. Users either starve to death or go mad. The obvious and outright drug dealing, excessive consumption, and the misery of drug addicts. All this happens under the watchful eyes of the delegados. Nobody says anything in front of the camera, but many claim it's the delegados who control the drug business here. He who has the drugs has the power. San Pedro, as a microcosm, reflects the problem of the whole country. Experts estimate 1 in 3 Bolivians regularly takes drugs. 21 tons of cocaine alone were seized last year, and nobody knows the exact figure or amount of cocaine that wasn't seized by law enforcement. However, experts estimate cocaine exports last year rose from 290 to 420 tons. 1 gram of cocaine costs you between $10 and $20 in La Paz. A country on a permanent high, wired, a land lost in drugs and crime. A country that attracts adventurers from around the world. Like Javier Blanco Alvarez, called Blanco. He's 38 years old and comes from a small Spanish village. He's been in San Pedro for 7 years now. Like many foreigners inside Bolivian prisons, he is there for a drug-related crime.
You get drugs on every corner in La Paz. I'm here for drug smuggling. I was pulled out by the police at the airport. They found the drugs at the bottom of my suitcase.
2 kilograms of cocaine. In Bolivia, suspected drug abuse is enough to get you arrested. According to Bolivian law, the prosecutor does not have to prove guilt. The accused must prove his or her innocence. Often a futile exercise, for Blanco anyway. So he sits in San Pedro and knows exactly how drugs turn people into zombies. For more than 4 years now, he is afraid to venture outside of his cell.
Better off alone than in bad company. I've been living this way for years now. I don't need anyone. You don't see it right away, but everyone just wants to steal from you. They're like, "Hey pal, how are you?" While behind your back they rob you blind. I'm my own best friend, next to Lupita.
Blanco earns his money doing woodwork. He sells furniture to other inmates to somehow keep afloat. San Pedro, Blanco's 24/7 nightmare. Until he gets out, he lives in constant fear of being robbed, or worse, and is ready for anything.
I can defend myself. I either use a spatula or some other tool. If someone makes trouble, then I'll just stab him. That's it.
Stabbings are a daily reality in San Pedro. Blanco does not want to leave his 4 walls, and he has found a solution for everything.
This is my toilet. It takes way too long to get to the toilets, and I don't go out at night.
He empties his toilet on the roof because he doesn't feel safe down below in the dark and dank corridors of San Pedro. Too many addicts, too many aggressive people. And in between this chaos of human despair, children, approximately 300 of them. Inmates of San Pedro may bring their families with them to prison. But because their parents are occupied during the day trying to make ends meet, earning money any way they can, most of the children are left to their own devices. One of the women who live here is Michelle Benduso Hurtado. Her daughter, Escalet, is only 5 months old, and the youngest resident of San Pedro so far. Michelle's husband, Cesar, is imprisoned for armed robbery. Michelle is not a criminal, lives here in San Pedro voluntarily. Financial constraints and fear for her family have brought her here.
When my husband got arrested, we had to give up our old apartment. My husband decided that from now on, we would live here together. We're like his key point, his strength, so he can survive here.
The family of 3 lives in a 6-square-meter room.
It was really difficult to set everything up, to make it comfortable for us. This room looked completely different. It was full of trash. We barely had space to walk around. We have a pet rat, and there are cockroaches. We always have to pay attention that they don't bite my baby girl or go after her food.
The inmates of San Pedro cannot choose in which room they want to live. They have to take what they can get. Michelle has managed to make the small room habitable, but the real dangers lurk outside the mini apartment.
Only a few women really look after their children in here. They walk out there in the dark alleys all by themselves, pretending like it's a normal street. But this is a jail. Here there are way more dangers than outside.
Michelle lives here of her own free will, but she is ashamed about her situation.
The only person who knows we're in prison is my mom. The rest of my family and friends think we are on vacation.
Michelle sticks by her husband, but the situation weighs heavily upon her. Despite being allowed to leave the prison twice a day for shopping and doctor visits, she still feels like a captive, innocent in jail. So why do so many families live in San Pedro? Simple, really, yet complicated. A woman living alone on the outside would barely be able to scrape through. Bolivia has no social services, so if you don't have money, you starve. On the inside, within prison walls, the families can at the very least stick together and don't have to pay rent for 2 places. It is a high price to pay, though, because the children lay amongst murderers and child abusers. Not that life is cheap on the inside. Who wants to survive in this cesspool of humanity needs food and protection. Protection delegados provide, and that does not come cheap. Everybody tries to get their hands on some cash. Some inmates who had a profession on the outside have an advantage. They wash, do repair work, or bake. But the weakest links, the ones who have no skills, are completely at the mercy of this tough hierarchy. Day after day, these men have to scramble to scratch together a few pennies. Some of them work as messengers, the so-called taxitas. They stand around at the entrance all day looking for those inmates who are expecting visits from the outside.
¿Qué nombre, señorita? ¿Se debería llamar señorita? Jesús Mojica. Jesús Mojica. David Zoque. Jesús Mojica.
The taxitas deliver messages or search for the prisoners who are expecting visitors. Not an easy task in the labyrinth of small, dark passages in San Pedro. They don't earn much money. Too little to survive, too much to die. Most of the inmates are poorer than they already were before they were convicted. Michelle's husband, Cesar, fights every single day to keep his small family afloat. It is not easy.
Money rules daily life. I came here with 10,000 pesos. On the third day, I only had 90 left.
Cesar has to pay the delegados $100 per month for the 20 square feet he occupies with his family. And if he doesn't pay, his wife and baby are out on the streets of San Pedro. Cesar and his wife get by baking and selling cupcakes. A constant worry is keeping this small business going. His biggest concern, however, is his wife and child.
It's very dangerous here, so I can't let them out of my sight. It gets even more dangerous here when it's a public holiday. Everybody drinks. On the last day of Carnival, they did not respect the fact that I have a small child. They attacked me with a knife. And because I had the little one in my arms, I could not defend myself. I ran to the gate, but there was no one there, no policeman, no security, nothing. And when I complained to the police the next day, they reported me to the delegados.
The police just informs the delegados. It couldn't have been worse for Cesar. The delegados punish him for his betrayal, what they consider betrayal. They beat him up. The reasoning? Nobody is to go to the police. The delegados rule and decide what's right and what's wrong. Valentino is one of the delegados, who determines that Cesar's complaint about the knife attack during Carnival was not justified.
During Carnival, a lot of things happen. You have to understand. We all do our best, and everyone has problems to deal with. And when people drink during the holidays, and somebody feels provoked, tempers flare and can get out of hand.
An even more volatile topic surrounds that of the sex offenders. They are considered fair game, and Valentino speaks openly about what is done to them.
In there, in the pool, we drown the sex offenders. They're beaten, and then we dump them in there. That's it.
During the day, it is a kid's pool, and at night, a scene of gruesome vigilantism. Again and again, inmates disappear or are found dead within these walls, mostly sex offenders. Those sex offenders who manage to survive are the dregs of San Pedro society, the scum. They are responsible for performing the most menial tasks, eating potatoes, working in the kitchen, cleaning up after everyone else, scrubbing toilets and prison cells of the more powerful inmates. One of them is Ricardo Sanchez. He raped 6 girls. Right after he arrived at San Pedro, the delegados sought him out. Since then, Ricardo doesn't speak anymore to anybody. He works from morning to night without earning a cent. There are many just like him. They know there is no tougher prison for sex offenders. The delegados' rule of law hovers over them constantly. Final station, San Pedro. A state within a state, a city within a city, a different planet, San Pedro. Vigilantism, with its own rule of law. Luck of the draw, roll of the dice, drugs, and rule of the strongest. The weak lose. Those who don't comply disappear without a trace. The ones with power rule. Just like Ronald Orna, he's been in San Pedro for 8 years. Cop killer, 12-year sentence. He knows his way around these walls and dark alleys, and he knows how to survive in here.
Respect is paramount in a prison. Here, when a new inmate comes in and wants to prove he is a tough guy, wants to stand up to the others, then he does not show the necessary respect to the established prisoners. Your reputation is directly related to your offense. I am, for example, a murderer. And that speaks for itself, right?
Who has committed what crime quickly makes the rounds in San Pedro. Here, the rule applies: the more severe the crime, the greater the prestige. Cop killer Ronald ranks high in the hierarchy. 12 noon, lunchtime. Ronald always finds a place to sit and eat. Others don't even get enough to eat.
We are a lot of people in here, almost 3,000, and many have their families with them. Everybody wants to eat, but there isn't enough for all of them.
Lunch is the only free meal in prison, the only chance for the poorest among the inmates to eat anything. The midday meal is financed by the state, but there is never enough to feed everyone. Alternately, rice with plantains or broth with chicken is on the menu. Each prisoner who has received his ration is listed by name. Those who are late go hungry. There are no extras. Because the state supplies only one meal per day, San Pedro has to take care of the rest. Each day, women and relatives bring food with them to the prison. And that's how drugs enter the prison as well. The police does what it can, but is completely overwhelmed. Those who have no relatives or other support on the outside lose, and sooner or later end up dead. Ronald usually has enough small change because he has connections to the top, to the powerful in San Pedro.
I earn my money with a few services for the delegados. Earlier, we had to strike out, punish someone. Disciplinary action due to misconduct. It's something we have to do. It's common practice. It went well, though. Part of my routine. Hey, senor, move on. We're having a private talk here, and that guy wants to eavesdrop. He has no manners. That can't happen here. Not with me. He gets in trouble with me for that kind of behavior.
Holding one's ground, demonstrating strength, that's the only way to survive in here. Originally designed to house 600 prisoners, in the meantime, 3,000 are estimated to be here. But no one knows the real numbers. That's a problem, because again and again people disappear, and the police has no clue what's going on. Currently, 5 inmates are officially listed as missing. Whether they are dead or have escaped, the police doesn't know.
I have no idea what is going on in there. They do what they want inside those walls. We are not allowed to enter.
Crazy and dangerous for any individual. Inmates like the Spaniard Blanco are left completely to their own devices. He has been in San Pedro for 7 years now and is too scared to leave his cell. He knows too well that inmates regularly disappear without a trace in Bolivia's most notorious prison.
I had a German friend, Stefan. 2 years ago, he suddenly disappeared. The others said he committed suicide. But who knows if that's true? This is not like in Spain where you get your cell, police everywhere, and cameras. Here, there's no one. They throw you in here and then may God help you.
If Blanco is to be believed, then you are truly at the mercy of San Pedro and its inmates.
We have a lot of rapings here. In this quarter, a man abused another man's wife. But more often, men rape other men. That's why I always sleep with one eye open and keep everything else closed.
Sex and prostitution, another huge issue in prison.
If you don't have a girlfriend or wife in here, then you get someone from the outside and pay her. But I don't want to, and even if I did, I don't have the money.
Blanco's time in prison, in one of the toughest prisons in all of South America, has left its toll.
People in Europe are very selfish. You don't realize it until you go to prison. I'm not sad. No. I'm grateful that I was able to realize that. And should I ever return to Spain, then I can change. And I will live better with less. I will not be selfish. I've sworn that to myself in here. In Spain, I saw poor people on the streets. Didn't interest me. But here, we're all extremely poor.
Money rules the world, especially in the small world of San Pedro. Corrupt through and through. Everybody needs money and everybody wants money. You pay off people to keep their mouths shut, especially when it comes to gambling. It is not allowed. But if it makes the delegados money, then even gambling and prostitution are allowed. Cell phones are not allowed here either, but you see them everywhere. And you can use them too if you bribe the right people. Money exchanges hands in the visitors area too. You want a cop to leave the room so you can have a private conversation? You need money. Whoever has the right status can even play football in San Pedro. Ronald, the cop killer, is respected and has a reputation as a tough guy. The system works for him. He has his finances under control and does lead a reasonably tolerable life in this unusual prison.
Nothing is free in here. Everything costs money. Everything has to be purchased. Everything has to be paid for. Like this Coke. One simply needs money.
Cop killer Ronald lives in the Pinos quarter, not a luxurious area of San Pedro, but significantly better than the drug quarter, for example, where aggressive crimes are pervasive. Although Ronald maintains good relations with the delegados, he still has to pay rent.
I sleep over there. There are inmates who have their own cell. But here, there are 5 of us. You know what I say? To each his own.
About 6 square meters for 5 grown men. No privacy at all. But this sleeping area is still considered one of the better ones and therefore costs money, like everything else.
We pay 3 pesos per day. We pay what we have to pay.
If you don't pay up, you have the delegados on your back. And in a place where you always run into somebody, no one wants to risk that. San Pedro is hopelessly overcrowded, the size of a football field. The prison was originally meant for 600 inmates. In the meantime, it's up to 3,000. And the greater the demand for a place to sleep, the higher the price for a roof over your heads. But the people who wash up on these shores usually have barely enough money to stay afloat. Most of the money passes his hands. Victor Hugo Mendoza, prison boss, controls San Pedro. To accommodate all of his underlings, he wants to enlarge the prison and is planning a new building.
I have to ensure that we get new material. We are looking for donations. There are people out there that help us. They donate money, bricks, and cement, so we can build this house.
Not 1 cent for the new building is coming from the Bolivian government. The government has abandoned San Pedro and implemented a bold social project in 2002, a prison without guards, inmates managing it themselves. The result? A completely dilapidated prison. Many of the houses here are over 100 years old, in danger of collapse, and only makeshift repairs are possible. Most of the cells are do-it-yourself because of lack of space. Those who cannot afford a place to live sleep between dirt and garbage in one of the many dark passages. 4-time murderer Mendoza is the only one who can change anything. He is not only prison boss, but building contractor as well.
I am not only proud, I am glad that I and my comrades were able to implement our project.
A project that sounds quite absurd upon closer inspection, because Mendoza's new prison building, once finished, will be only 10 centimeters lower than the actual prison walls.
Since there is an observation tower, from there they control us. There is CCTV, so they have the outer walls under control.
Empty surveillance towers and unguarded walls that are 10 centimeters high. Hugo Mendoza plays dumb. He knows exactly what he can say and what he prefers to keep to himself.
It would perhaps be too much to say that I feel like a king. But up here, I feel free. I feel the wind more up here. You can feel the freedom. Down there, among all those people, it is ominous and depressing.
Hugo Mendoza looks at his little kingdom as it appears to continue to grow. Because this is San Pedro in La Paz, one of the toughest prisons in South America. A prison in which no guards or police officers dare enter. Who ends up behind those bars is completely at the mercy of the ruling prisoners and their order of conduct. A prison boss who together with his posse controls the entire prison. A prison where people disappear, where others lock themselves in out of fear, where a small group of people control everything, where you either pay up or go to the dogs. A prison where drugs are ubiquitous, and in the middle of this quagmire, the innocent children are on their own. This is San Pedro, a city within a city, a world unto itself, with its own rule of law. How will it go on? Prison boss Hugo Victor Mendoza wants to continue to preside over the nearly 3,000 prisoners. His new building will probably be finished in a year. But it is really only a drop in the bucket because San Pedro is overcrowded, 6-fold. The police, huddled in their small office, are resigned to the harsh realities. They expect things to get worse before they get better, and so their jobs remain as dangerous as ever.
If they want to escape, they can. We do our best, but we can't have our eyes on everyone. We just can't monitor everything.
Cop killer Ronald Orna doesn't need to escape. After 12 years in different prisons, he could soon be a free man.
When I'm out of here, I'm sitting down with my family to dinner, at home, with my wife, my children, my nephews and nieces. We eat ceviche that I have prepared by myself.
Cesar has about 4 more years ahead of him, but he has had relapses and doesn't think he can make it on his own.
We need support. The people who get out of here are extremely poor. What are they going to do? Go out and steal again? Many get out on Friday and are back inside by Monday.
And Blanco, to be honest, he is on the verge of losing his mind.
I'm afraid of losing myself completely in here. But there will be nothing left of me. I want to get out of here, but I do not think I will ever return to Spain.
Bolivia, La Paz, San Pedro, a city in a city, a state within a state, and definitely one of the toughest and most notorious prisons on the planet. Baja California, in northern Mexico. The Mexican underworld is concentrated here, right on the American border. The cartels fight over this drug and arms corridor in no man's land with savage violence. The bloody consequence? Countless murders, kidnappings, and torture. Thousands of soldiers and police officers take part in the fight against the narcos every day. But in a vicious circle of corruption and violence, the situation is more dangerous than ever. As a check on the drug war, the worst criminals are banished to the desert, to the middle of nowhere, to the dreaded maximum security prison, El Hongo. A high-tech fortress designed according to American standards, the only prison in all of Mexico where bribery is useless. Fences over 10 feet high, countless video cameras. The inmates here must obey the law of the guards.
There's nothing here. No drugs, no tobacco. The government's in charge.
But resistance stirs within.
The prisoners got out of their cells, ripped the legs off the tables and chairs, and attacked us with these homemade weapons.
Cartel killers, drug bosses, child molesters. Serving sentences of up to 70 years, the inmates have nothing left to lose.
We can't always win. That just means we have to stop from fighting them.
A daily struggle for survival.
The hardest thing is not knowing what will happen each day.
In a prison for the toughest criminals in the country, it only takes one spark to light the powder keg. "11:30 a.m. Shift change in the maximum security bunker. Starting now, 26-year-old Parra will spend 24 hours behind these walls. The command center has to give its approval each time the gate is opened. No one enters El Hongo without consent. This is a super maximum security prison. Everyone is subject to the same search procedure. No exceptions. Nothing is allowed through the security check. No cell phones, cigarettes, or food. Each new shift demands a major effort from the 26-year-old guard.
When I first started working here, I was afraid of the prisoners. But you get used to it over time. I can deal with it better now.
Entrance into the high-tech bunker requires a fingerprint and iris scan. The first stop, the weapons storeroom.
Hi. I'd like a gas canister and a baton, please.
Live ammunition is only allowed on the watchtowers and outside the prison walls. Inside, the guards protect themselves from rebellious prisoners with tear gas and batons. A necessity. El Hongo is one of the biggest prisons in Mexico and one of the most notorious. The gigantic complex consists of 3 security zones. El Hongo 1 houses 3,000 prisoners of all kinds: murderers, rapists, drug dealers. Next door, El Hongo 2 has about 600 inmates who require the next highest security level. Gang members and rebels are housed separately in F block. El Hongo 3 tops them all. Its nearly 300 prisoners are among the most dangerous criminals in the whole country. The new shift begins in El Hongo 2. Along with 20 other guards, Parra has to keep the unruly prisoners under control. In the 5 years in which he's worked at the prison, he has already experienced a major riot.
The cell door was open, and the prisoners got out of their cell. They ripped the legs off the tables and chairs and attacked us with these homemade weapons. Honestly, I was scared. But you've got to control your feelings. You have to keep your impulses in check.
The guards only managed to put down the riot with the help of the police and the military. Cell check. 76 inmates in one room. Under observation 24 hours a day. Privacy, none at all. Nevertheless, the prisoners find ways to escape the watch of the authorities.
There are blind spots here, places with no cameras. So we have to go into the cells to check whether any prisoners are lying there, injured, for example. The inmates know where the cameras don't reach, and that's where they go to resolve their problems.
That's why Parra is checking the washing areas. Many prisoners can't deal with the prison's strict rules. The result, they lash out violently at others or themselves. Today, however, he doesn't find anything. Francisco, a prisoner, knows these problems well. He's been here for 8 years.
The best is not to cause any problems or start a fight with other prisoners. I just want to do my time. If you touch other people's stuff, you'll get in trouble, and usually into a fight.
See nothing, hear nothing, say nothing. This is already the 32-year-old's 5th time in prison, this time for drug dealing and stealing guns. In El Hongo, however, he's gotten clean for the first time, the hard way.
The guards are in control. There's nothing here, no drugs, no tobacco. The government's in charge. They're the bosses, not us.
Poverty and lack of opportunity drive many Mexicans to drug addiction. But in the maximum security stronghold in the desert, it's nearly impossible to get access to drugs. Sensors, cameras, cell phone jammers. The prison resembles a high-tech fortress. Sharp shooters on 15 watchtowers make sure around the clock that nothing comes in or out. Those who try end up in the notorious F block. isolation, and monotony. The punishment for everyone who causes problems in the prison. 2 prisoners per cell at the most. But even that doesn't prevent many from rebelling against the system. Once a day, guards like Para have to check if everything's okay.
What are you doing?
I'm just making a list of what I want to buy in the store.
Gabriel has been behind bars for 15 years, the last 10 in the special housing unit. Nevertheless, the prisoner is still in active contact with others.
Oh, it's my mail. My mail, we send mail through other floors, other parts. We have ways to communicate either sign language or dialect. We have phonics words that cars can understand.
Gabriel is not supposed to have contact with other prisoners. A couple years ago, he was one of the main people behind the riot.
They consider us dangerous to other people. That way we think. The way we think, we influence a lot of people to think a certain way, like us, and they consider us a danger to them.
Gabriel is from Los Angeles. He's a member of a Hispanic gang called Blythe Street. He was imprisoned for crimes he committed as part of the gang.
I'm here for kidnapping. For kidnapping, which that was committed in 2003, that was 15 years ago. Yes. My sentence was 33 years and a half. Yes, that's my sentence, original sentence. But to be honest with you, just living incriminating, but I really don't care right now. I'm in a country where it's gonna corrupt it, so money talks, and I'll be out pretty soon. I already did more than enough time, so I'll be out soon. Yes.
Confident statements for a man who has only seen the world from inside a jail for the last 15 years. His cellmate, Gilbert, is also from LA. He hasn't set foot outside the prison walls for 16 years. The one bright spot, a barred window with a view of the yard. Solitary confinement means isolation. But Gilbert knows how to get by. Using a homemade sling, he trades food with the inmates on the floor below.
We have to do it without them seeing us. So it's not allowed. Usually, if I get caught, they'll probably take 2 weeks from yard for me, and I won't go out for nothing. For 2 weeks, I'll be here myself.
He's willing to take his chances. On the outside, he experienced and did much bloodier things.
I'm here for working with the cartels in Mexico, trying to get all the territories and...
The methods of the Mexican drug cartels are gruesome. In 2017, more than 19,000 murders were committed by the mafia.
All I can tell you is that after so many things you do, you forget, you stop counting. That's the way it is. I mean, at first it's just you just do it for the money. It's nothing personal, and then after that it's just like if it's a normal thing, just for the how do you say adrenaline? It's just for the adrenaline, and it's easy to get away with it here in Mexico. I'm only here for guns, 4 guns. So I was one of the lucky persons.
Yeah. Gilbert is only doing time for arms dealing, not for murder. It's no rarity in Mexico. Only 2% of violent crimes ever get solved. That means 98 out of 100 murderers and kidnappers get away with it. 2 p.m., time to go to the yard. Once a week, the prisoners in F Block are allowed to spend time in small groups in would-be freedom. The only diversion from their monotonous daily routine. The inmates now have 2 hours to make telephone calls and go shopping. Cash is forbidden in the prison. Payments are made via fingerprint. Money can be paid into the prisoners' accounts by wire transfer or in cash on visiting day. A maximum of $65 per week. In this way, the prison director hopes to prevent extortion and corruption. The only contact to the outside world, the telephone in the yard. Family news is the top priority.
My daughter's that's priority. Let's talk first. This is how she's doing.
Gabriel's 3 daughters all live in Los Angeles. Tomorrow is a big day. His youngest daughter is coming to visit for the first time in 14 years. Gabriel clarifies the final details of their meeting. After that, he takes care of some business.
All right, if the director does... Casper! No answer, dog. Well, hold on, he did. Hey, what's up? Hey, I'm
Gabriel also makes phone calls on behalf of others. They use hand signals to communicate with each other. An act of kindness or calculation.
Whatever I can assist them with, whatever's to my reach. If besides doing my calls, that's my priority. If I can help them out with other people's calls, so I do that.
Only 2 hours of freedom per week. That's part of the concept in El Hongo, one of the most secure prisons in the world. The prisoners in F Block are lucky. There's one section in the prison where the inmates see even less daylight. El Hongo 3 houses the worst criminals in all of Mexico. It's super maximum security. Organized crime, cartel bosses, corrupt government officials. The prisoners here could jeopardize the safety of the entire country. This man is the warden of evil, Commander Carlos Villalbazo. He's been in charge of El Hongo 3 for several years. In that time, he has experienced many dangerous situations. The most recent attack, an inmate wounded him with a knife.
The hardest thing is not knowing what will happen, what to expect. It always depends on the mood of the prisoners. No 2 days are alike.
Shift change. The commander is aware of the constantly lurking danger. That's why the guards work in teams.
Being careful is the most important thing. The moment you feel too secure, the prisoners could pounce.
1 minute of inattentiveness could cost the commander his life. Each day, the guards in El Hongo 3 have to settle disputes or separate prisoners. No wonder. Each 10 by 15-foot cell is shared by up to 6 criminals. Today is the annual eye exam. That means civilians in the Super Max Wing, an additional challenge for the commander. The prisoners can literally smell how tense the guards are.
The prisoners can get rebellious when there are too few guards. That's why we have to put handcuffs on them, in order to control their movements.
A few years ago, there was an escape attempt, but it failed miserably. The prisoners are under minute observation. Walls over 10 feet high, non-stop surveillance. The prison was even recognized by the American government for its high security standards. In Mexico, El Hongo is considered the model prison par excellence. That's why the inmates of El Hongo 3 use every opportunity to escape the dull monotony of their cells.
A little sun is nice. We like it. It gives us a bit more freedom.
Carlos Tejeda Valdez has been in the maximum security prison for more than 16 years. For his crime, he's serving a 25-year sentence. In prison, Carlos doesn't need to fear that someone will take revenge. On the outside, things are different. His victims' relatives are just waiting for him to be set free again.
It may be true, but I'm not afraid. I've thought about it, but I'm not scared. I believe in God. He protects me from my enemies. And if not, then I'll bite the grass again, as we prisoners say. But I can't imagine I'd have problems after getting out. If the situation does arise, however, then I'll have to stand up straight and take the bull by the horns.
For many of the inmates, life has become a dangerous game of chance, and the daily routine in prison is not for everyone.
There are also people who can't handle prison. We all have to get through it. But those people aren't here in the cells. They're somewhere else, housed in a separate cell block. The prisoners here are only in for murder and kidnapping.
Violence among inmates, no rarity. Indeed, it's the order of the day. El Hongo has murderers, rapists, and drug smugglers who shrink from absolutely nothing. That's why some prisoners have to be kept apart. The cell block for homosexuals. About 20 men live here, kept separate from all the other inmates, to protect them from attack. At 59, Francis Names is one of the oldest prisoners. The former psychiatrist was arrested by the police with 5 kilograms of meth. Since then, he calls this cell his paltry home.
I've been here for 7 years and don't have any problems. Thank God I'm okay. The guards tell me what to do. Do this, don't do that, but they're good to me.
Even if the guards don't bully the homosexual inmates, Mexico is split in this regard. Prejudices are strong among the broader population, and especially among the prisoners. That's why no one else is present when Francis goes out into the yard. A gay man in a prison full of men. It's a blessing and a curse at the same time. So far, Francis has been lucky. In 2 days, he has a long-awaited hearing. It will decide whether he'll be released 2 years early.
Hopefully, the judge will do the right thing.
The prospect of seeing his adopted son and grandson again soon overwhelms the 59-year-old. He's had no contact with them since he started serving his sentence. Francis places all his hopes in the judge's decision. His future is uncertain. At 7 p.m., the prisoners are sent back to their cells. Time to shut the doors. The guards have to check that every prisoner is present, about 2,000 in total. Officer Parra is among the guards at work in El Hongo too.
Hola, señora.
Line up. Hands behind your backs. You know what to do.
To help the guards keep a clear overview, each prisoner is entered into the system by his fingerprints. Name, sentence, time served. The system leaves no room for loopholes.
We have to count the prisoners every day. We use a special system. The machine reads the inmates' fingerprints and compares them with the database. If a prisoner isn't in the cell, but rather in the infirmary, then we have to get his fingerprint from there. Otherwise, the system reports a problem. But so far, no one's ever been missing.
So far, no one has managed to escape from Mexico's most secure prison. But that doesn't mean the situation will stay that way. The mood among the prisoners can change in a flash.
I'm not really afraid. It's more that I'm nervous. You're here with so many inmates in one cell, and you know each one has done something terrible.
That's why Parra is glad to leave the cell block behind him for a while. In El Hongo 3, the guards have their most difficult task ahead of them: a cell raid. At night in the prison, while the inmates are in bed, the Special Commando prepares for its mission.
The first group searches the cells. You know the procedure. Understood?
The guards have gotten a tip. Drugs have supposedly been stashed in 2 cells. The inmates in El Hongo 3, so dangerous that even the highly trained special unit only dares to go in with an absolute numeric advantage. All the prisoners have to leave the cell. The tone is severe. No objections are tolerated. The atmosphere in the group cell is tense. If the guards do indeed find drugs or weapons, there will be a drastic penalty to pay: a sentence extension of up to 25 years. Carlos lives in one of the cells under suspicion.
It's unpleasant. I don't have anything to hide, but it's unpleasant.
Whether that's true remains to be seen. The search party proceeds. Every nook is unsparingly searched. Backup is waiting outside the cell, the special canine unit. Despite the excitement, the dog handler, Sandra, knows she can depend on her 4-legged colleague's nose.
The dogs are trained to stay calm in stressful situations like these. That means that fast movements, loud noise, when someone slams the door open or shuts or drops something, that stuff doesn't bother them. It's important for the dogs to be calm before the actual search begins.
Sandra's search dog is one of 20 that support the guards in the search for drugs. Over time, the prisoners come up with the sneakiest hiding places.
The inmates can hide things in bed, back at the wall, or in these holes here. Search here. Even in the scratches on the wall or in the toilet.
If the dog lays its ears back, it's found something. The dogs raise the alarm very rarely, but the guards still have to follow up on every tip, no exceptions.
We've searched 2 cells and found nothing.
False alarm. Neither dog nor guards have found anything. The Special Commando withdraws. That also means that the security barriers have worked. El Hongo prison is and remains the maximum security bunker par excellence. F Block, preventive detention. Once a week, Gabriel and his cellmate get to go out into the yard. The other 6 days of the week, the cell door stays closed.
It wasn't always like that. We had the power. We had them under our thumb. They should do obey us, but things change. Like you can't always win the government, but you can. That doesn't mean we have to stop from fighting them. I miss having my cell phone. I miss having my TV. I miss a lot of things. I miss the freedom. We had keys. We had our own keys to ourselves. I miss those times.
Bribery is the order of the day in Mexico. Politics, the bureaucracy, the military. Corruption infiltrates all layers of society like a cancer.
Even though we're behind bars, we still have strong connections with people out there that help us out when we need it. I'm just a simple prisoner willing doing my time. So the more corrupt, the better for me.
Within the prison walls, however, the wardens wage a fierce war against corruption. Carlos, the commander, knows what to expect.
Honestly, the people currently in charge of the prison are not corrupt. But if a guard becomes corrupt, it's difficult. Then he's got consequences to fear. Either you get prosecuted and end up behind bars yourself, or you lose your job. Corruption is scorned here.
El Hongo prison is considered absolutely incorruptible, the only one in all of Mexico. On the other hand, there's a great deal of violence and aggression. Many of the inmates will only leave prison when they die.
Most of our problems have to do with the prisoners' moods. You never know what mood they'll wake up in. They can behave quite calmly, but when they get bad news from home, they immediately get aggressive. And that leads to fights among the inmates, and even to riots. You have to keep an eye on the situation and make sure that it doesn't spread to the whole cell block.
In prison, even the smallest provocation can lead to a massive revolt among the inmates. For Gabriel in F Block, today is finally the day of his youngest daughter's long-awaited visit. At this point, he still doesn't know what the day holds for him.
My daughters and my wife. My main motivation.
Gabriel hasn't seen his youngest daughter in 14 years. He was arrested and convicted in Mexico right after her birth. His family lives in America, which is why they're only in touch with each other by phone. That's supposed to change in a few hours. His cellmate, Gilbert, has no visitors today. El Hongo's remote location makes it difficult for people to visit.
The fact that how they made this prison here, it's pretty hard. You know, I'm pretty sure it's different from a lot of prisons. The family could just move around and live around the city, around the prison, and it's easier for you. Here, I mean, it's twice a month a visit, but I mean, it's hard because they have to come all the way over here. Not only that, I mean, it's dangerous, you know, because anything could happen, you know.
The cartel killer knows what he's talking about. Nevertheless, family is often the only thing that keeps the isolated prisoners from going crazy.
My ex-wife, she was having problems. I said to myself, well, I have to help her because I was only getting 700 pesos, which is $70 a week here, so there was no way I could help her, so I had to do what I had to do, and I did it, and I helped them out, and while I'm here, and you know, part of me, I'm I don't regret it, but half of me, you know, it's sad being here, you know. It's really sad. But hopefully this nightmares should be coming out, should be going away pretty soon.
He'll spend at least another 2 years between a nightmare and reality. Visiting day in no man's land. Every civilian who wants to enter El Hongo must submit to a very thorough search. The guards monitor the visitors with cameras and metal detectors. No contraband is allowed to cross the threshold of the maximum security bunker. In addition, Sandra, the dog handler, uses a search dog to search the family members for drugs and cell phones.
Hold onto your glasses so they don't get broken. The dog isn't aggressive, and he'll only jump if there's something inside. Search.
If the visitors do have something illegal with them, the dog lies down on the floor right in front of them. But that doesn't seem to be the case today.
Good. Thank you. Go ahead.
Smuggling methods have gotten increasingly sophisticated over the years. That's why the search dog checks all the gifts and mementos brought to the inmates. Especially popular, cell phones.
The whole prison is outfitted with signal jammers. You can also see them on the watchtowers. So there's no service inside the walls. But some people still try to smuggle cell phones inside. The consequences for that can be seen in the pictures on the wall.
The prison director is ruthless when it comes to smuggling. Those who try it usually don't leave the prison. The smuggling of illegal substances and cell phones is punishable by up to 25 years in prison. Back to Gabriel in F Block. He's looking forward to his daughter's long-awaited visit. But then comes unexpected news.
Do you have a visitor this morning? What did Danny say?
Yes, from 9:30 to 11. Is she there?
No, not yet.
Come on. Let me go out into the yard to make a phone call.
We're waiting for a visit for Valverde. His family still has exactly 1 hour to enter the prison. If they're not there by then, the visit will be canceled. We have a schedule from 9:30 to 11. If the family arrives just 1 minute past 11, they can't come in.
Gabriel hasn't seen his daughter in 14 years. And now time is running out. If she doesn't show up in the next hour, the earliest he can get approval for another visit will be 14 days. The moment of truth. Will Gabriel be able to embrace his daughter for the first time?
Come here. An hour has passed and nobody showed up, so no visit today.
Yeah, but I wanted to make a call anyway. You have the authorization. You have the key. And you can let me into the yard. I understand it's not easy, but the people over there also get to go down. This sucks. Really, this is giving me a headache.
Right, but your visitors didn't show up.
Okay.
An exception? Not in El Hongo. Gabriel is frustrated. He has no idea why his daughter didn't come. He has to make a plan.
Junior's the next one they'll take to the yard. He should make the call.
For years, Gabriel has waited for a chance to see his daughter, who is now 16. Today, he must bury his hopes.
It's bumps in their lives, obstacles we have to overcome. I gotta be strong. So, I'm gonna keep fighting until they can give it to me again. I mean, I've waited. I haven't seen her for 14 years. A few more days, a few more weeks, a few more months. Eventually I'll see her again.
At least he has the chance of being released in a few years. Some of the prisoners in El Hongo 3 will never leave. La Flor, the flower. That's what the guards call the special cell block, a prison within the prison, for the worst criminals of all, with sentences between 50 and 70 years. That's where Carlos, the commander, has to do his weekly rounds. To avoid dangerous situations, the guards only enter this cell block in closed formation.
The inmates here aren't in solitary confinement, but they're watched very closely. There's very strict surveillance. The prisoners here are serving sentences of up to 70 years. They have nothing left to lose.
Organized crime, corrupt politicians, drug barons. La Flor's 106 inmates could transform the whole country into a bloody battlefield. The 9 by 12-foot cells are shared by 2 or 3 prisoners, hardened men kept like attack dogs in cages, some of them for the rest of their lives.
I'm serving 50 years for murder. That's why I'm here.
We get to go into the yard once a week for half an hour to make phone calls. It's depressing.
The guard's job: make sure the prisoners don't kill each other or themselves. The commander has to bring one of them to the doctor. The prisoners have almost no contact to the outside world. On the other hand, they have lots of time for reflection.
I'm in jail because I was in organized crime in Baja California. But in prison, you shouldn't think you'll get help from the cartel. You have to pull yourself up out of the muck.
No prospect of a reduced sentence or help from outside. Instead, lives that will end behind bars after decades of time served. The commander's shift is over. Time to go home. But it's actually not a home at all. A single room in the administrative section of the jail, smaller than the prisoner cells. It's simply too dangerous to live outside the prison. But Carlos needs neither luxury nor comfort. His job is his life.
I like my job. There aren't many people who want to do it. You've got to make some tough decisions, but that's part of the job. Some prisoners will despise you, even if you encourage them. But that's no reason to quit. You've got to be a professional here.
Gilbert has 2 more years to serve. Enough time to mull over his future.
My mother, I'm her early son. Yeah, she does feel sad, and she's getting old already, so I gotta stop this already. I think it's already time to do what I gotta do when I get out, because next time, I don't think she'll be around. And that's the only person that I could trust.
And Gabriel, when he gets out, he won't be able to avoid gang life.
You could be out, but you don't have to do the heavy things. You can do the light things. You can survive with it. As long as you don't know too much or do too much, but still be part, it'll work out. Yeah. Just big decisions in your life, and I made some, and there's no turn back.
Either join them or die. In Mexico, it's extremely difficult to stay on the straight path, and thus, most of the prisoners will spend their whole lives behind bars. The only incorruptible prison in a country sinking into corruption and violence. Bogota, Colombia. For decades, the megalopolis has been fighting against cultural decline, against the ever-widening gap between rich and poor. 27% of the city's 8 million inhabitants live below the poverty line. The biggest fight, the fight against drugs. No country is better known for narcotics than Colombia, but a change is underway here too. Colombia is transforming from a country of drug producers into a country of drug users. The cost of drugs is steadily declining, and the rate of addiction is rising, and with it, criminal activity, as that's the only way most people can get money for their next high. A vicious circle, which, with great likelihood, ends here, in one of the toughest prisons in Colombia, Cárcel Distrital. A daily struggle for survival takes place behind these walls, a struggle with guards and other inmates, and with oneself. "1,000 prisoners are serving sentences here or awaiting a verdict. Most of them sex offenders, dealers, or thieves. They are in control here.
I'm in charge of the yard.
Brutal altercations are a part of everyday prison life.
There are occasional stabbings in the cells.
And they leave their mark.
I was cut with a knife. My shirt was all bloody and someone threw it away.
Common causes of problems, drugs, and money. Most of the inmates can't get by without drugs, and the guards can do hardly anything about it.
No one pays for anything here.
The inmates play by different rules.
If you don't want to pay, we won't do anything anymore. It'll stay dirty here.
The most difficult struggle is the struggle with oneself.
If we don't get him fixed, I know he'll try to commit suicide again.
A struggle that many people lose. "5 in the morning. The streets outside are quiet. It's different behind the walls of this penitentiary. The guards have a lot to do today. They have to process 50 new prisoners. They've been transferred here from an overcrowded jail. One of them, 22-year-old Diego de Jesus. This is his second time in prison, serving a 5-year sentence. He doesn't plan to come back again.
I have to think positive. I want to get out of here. It's full of difficult situations that you've got to deal with. It's also hard because you're separated from your family.
Diego first went to prison at the age of 15. He served 3 years for theft. His crime this time? Theft and illegal possession of a firearm. He's already spent 17 months in other prisons. His transfer was a surprise.
I had to pack quickly, so I wasn't able to pack all my things.
Each prison has its own rules. What was allowed in his last prison is not necessarily allowed here in the penitentiary. That's why many new arrivals have things with them that they're not allowed to keep.
That's prohibited.
I forgot.
SIM cards, however, are prohibited in all prisons. The new arrivals are extremely creative in their attempts to smuggle things into the prison. Things that make their lives in jail easier or safer.
We found scissors like these hidden quite well inside clothing. Prisoners can use them to hurt others or themselves, or even the prison staff.
That's how problems are dealt with here in jail. So it's important to search the new arrivals as carefully as possible. Despite the jail's strict rules, the prisoners are allowed to bring small personal items with them that have no material value.
This is from my wife and son. My son died. He's dead.
It's not the first painful loss he's had to bear. Diego lost his parents when he was still a child. He was raised by his grandparents. He got to know the brutal side of life early on, like many inmates here. Fertile soil for a broken path towards a life of crime. The 50 new arrivals have to be processed. It will take about 12 hours. But not all of them will stay here. If the upcoming examinations reveal that an inmate is ill, either physically or mentally, he gets sent back to the other jail. At the same time, the lights go on in one of the men's cell blocks. Every day, the nearly 1,000 inmates get up at 5 a.m. and are locked back in at 5 p.m. In those 12 hours, they are only allowed to be in the yard. And there, he's in charge. 23-year-old Nicolas Garcia.
Water! God be with you. Thank you.
Nicolas has been serving a sentence here for robbery for 1.5 years now. It's his second time in prison. He knows how he has to behave behind bars in order to survive.
I'm in charge of the yard. There's lots of unrest and no order. I've seen lots of fights, and I've won a couple too.
As the boss on this cell block, Nicolas has many duties.
This pavilion has thieves and also some sex offenders. I have to intercede to make sure they don't go after one another.
Leaders and gangs are prohibited here, but factions nevertheless manage to emerge and take control. They take care of a few things and maintain order, but they also shake down their fellow inmates when something doesn't suit them. This, in turn, alarms the guards. In total, the prison has 150 guards, 18 junior officers, and 3 lieutenants. They make sure the inmates feel the necessary harshness and discipline. Still, there are daily altercations. The reason? Boredom or power struggles. That's why all the guards always carry batons and handcuffs.
Sometimes there are knife fights in the cells in the morning.
What do you want me to do? What do you want? We're going.
The potential for conflict in the jail is very high. Many hardened criminals are confined in a small space. The nearly 1,000 inmates are divided into 6 cell blocks, 1 woman's cell block and 5 men's cell blocks. Nicolas is sitting in the yard for those prisoners who've already been sentenced. The other 4 are for male inmates awaiting a final sentence. The back part of the prison contains the kitchen, the section for solitary confinement, and the workshops, in which certain inmates work for 4 hours during the day. The smaller building is for the prison's administrators. This is also where the visitors check in and new prisoners are processed. Diego, the new inmate, must wait for 1 hour before his processing continues, penned up with 25 other newbies. This is the 3rd prison he's been in, and each one is different in its own way. In the last prison, the inmates didn't have to wear standard prison clothing, but here they do.
You've got to start over. That's normal. Like when you start a new job, you've got to learn everything over again. Where you can stand, what you can do, how things work.
The prisoners are allowed to have 1 change of clothing in their cells. They wear it on wash day. Otherwise, they are always required to wear the orange prison uniform. No prisoner should be distinguishable from the others. Individuality is not tolerated here.
You can bring toiletries with you. You have to wear a light undershirt. You can take a few things out of the bag to take with you. Toiletries, foot powder, deodorant, toothpaste, razors. Please take all these things out now.
The inmates aren't allowed to take anything else, nor could they. 4 prisoners have to share a 6 by 10 foot cell. Each cell has a toilet and a sink. The beds, 4 concrete slabs with mattresses. Each prisoner has his own small shelf for personal items. They're never even supposed to have the opportunity to feel comfortable.
Diego.
Now it's time for the next step in Diego's processing. The guards have to take fingerprints from every prisoner. It's not enough for the files to simply be transferred from the other prison, for the fingerprints could have changed, for example, due to scars. But the guards take fingerprints not only from those who are new to the prison, but also from inmates who leave the prison, like John Fernando González Diaz, who is being taken to the hospital for an examination. But there's a problem.
You have to wear the orange shirt neatly and be shaved. You haven't shaved. You can't go to the examination without being decently shaved.
I was cut with a knife. My shirt was all bloody and someone threw it away.
John Fernando has been here for 3 years. He shot someone during a robbery.
This is jail.
A couple days ago, he got into a fight with another inmate. John Fernando seriously wounded him. For many prisoners, violence is the only way to survive here.
All the prisons here in Colombia, they are tough, for sure. If you don't see what you're doing, even they can kill you, you know? Probably you can't get out of here, you know? That's why you have to always be looking out. While you're walking, who you looking, who you talking to, you know? All the time, you gotta be looking out all the time.
This is already John Fernando's 4th time in jail. His body bears the marks of the years he's served, in the form of scars and tattoos.
This one I make it in Mexico. It means God bless me, never happens again. This one, it means I fight with 2 guys in Mexico too, in jail. One of them is dead. The other one, I take out eye, that's right. And the Colombian flowers is come out from the Mexican skull, you know? And my stars, 3 times in jail, 3 times be out.
John Fernando is a notorious thief, and he has no compunction about using weapons. That's how he earns his living, and he hopes to make a lot of money. Many of the inmates never learned any other way to make a living. It's the easiest way, albeit a hard one, that usually leads directly to prison. John Fernando is leaving the prison walls for the first time in 3 years. Naturally, he is heavily guarded, as is the case with every prisoner transport. There is a great danger of escape, and a risk that accomplices outside the jail will try to free the prisoners. Whereas the guards usually only carry batons, here they protect themselves with bulletproof vests and a gun. So far, all attempts to escape or to free prisoners have been thwarted. Such transports take place every day. Inmates often pretend to be sick in order to get out, and then smuggle things back in. Colombia is a country in which bribery is normal. This is how many prisoners obtain contraband from the hospital, which they then smuggle into the prison. And to prevent this, the inspections are very thorough. Even though it's a prison, there are still drugs here. Many of the inmates are addicted or take drugs to make their everyday lives more bearable. Since the guards don't always find everything, drug-sniffing dogs are used. Diego, the new inmate, knows that the first hours in prison are decisive.
You can't cause problems. If you do, then you have even more problems. You have to behave really well in order to get released early. And when I get out, I want to help my grandmother.
New inmate processing also includes a medical exam. Anyone found to be sick is not allowed to have contact with the other inmates. The risk of infection is too great. At 5:45, the guards close the cells for 12 hours. From now on, the prisoners must stay in the yards of their respective cell blocks. There is no opportunity to spend time alone, find peace or quiet, or enjoy privacy. As he does every morning, Nicholas, the boss, marks his territory. 14 people belong to his gang. Each has his own jobs, handed out by the boss, of course.
Buddy, help with the cleaning. Get out of the way so they can clean. Clear the court.
The prison has rules and routines, but the prisoners expand on them in their own way.
Some people clean in exchange for a sentence reduction. But since they can't keep everything clean themselves, 2 or 3 people help out. On Sunday, they get paid for it. We demand 35 cents or cigarettes. We don't keep the money, but pass it on to the men who do the cleaning.
Money is prohibited in the prison. Payment is made in cigarettes or telephone PIN numbers. They're worth a lot here, as they enable contact to the outside world. In order to use the phone, inmates have to have a PIN number which gives them credit. The telephone cards themselves are provided by family or friends on the outside. The more rules there are, the more people break them. Nicholas sees himself as an intermediary between prisoners, but also between inmates and guards.
I have to stop the fights that break out here. If fights take place, I lose my status. I am the people. I'm the one in charge.
Most of the inmates accept Nicholas. He must fight regularly to prove that he belongs at the top of his cell block. The guards tolerate Nicholas as boss as long as he works in their interests. If he doesn't, his will be the first head to roll. The inmates know that too.
There's always one person there in case things get chaotic. But this person must have character, be strong. Otherwise, many people will try to bring him down and take his place. Like a president is in charge of his government, there also has to be someone here who's in charge of the yard.
Officially, the guards are in charge of the yard. But there's a big problem. The guards can be bribed, but they try to avoid conflicts with the inmates. The guards know that there are drugs here and that many inmates use them. From morning to night, the inmates smoke marijuana, take cocaine, or get high on bazuco, a cheap byproduct of cocaine production. It all goes on right under the guards' noses, but they put up with it, since they can't stop it completely anyway.
There are many ways for forbidden substances to find their way into the prison. They can be brought in by visitors on visiting day, or they can be thrown into the pavilions from outside. There are many ways to get contraband inside.
Throwing things over the prison walls is one of the most popular and effective ways of smuggling contraband into the jail. Quick as lightning, one of the inmates grabs the package that's been thrown in. A lot of thought goes into the concealment of smuggled goods. Drugs, weapons, and cell phones are wrapped up in many small pieces of paper. Everything is quickly distributed and hidden until the guards have nothing left to find except the letters that are also in the packages. And the prisoners explain them in their own way.
They were letters. A family member decides to write and sends them.
One example, I was arrested with an accomplice. He's in the other yard, so he sends me a letter to tell me we have a hearing on a certain day. The letters are about that kind of thing.
The penitentiary's location makes it an easy target for this kind of smuggling. The cell blocks are surrounded on one or two sides by public streets, and the yards have no roofs. Not all the packages make it to the yards. They land on the roofs and then on this table. The lieutenant is taking pictures of the contents of 15 packages that were all thrown in 1 week, but that didn't hit their target.
We have a couple of greenish substances here. Looks like marijuana. And the stuff here comes wrapped in individual portions. It's another way to smuggle drugs, swallowing them or hiding them in body cavities. That's why the guards often can't find drugs. But the dogs can.
Only a fraction of the packages remains on the roof. Most make their way into the yard, but that doesn't always mean trouble.
According to Colombian law, possessing, selling, and transporting drugs is illegal. If we find someone with more than 20 grams, that is more than 20 grams of marijuana, or 1 gram of bazuco, if we find someone with more than this dose, then we prosecute him.
Even in prison, this law applies. Prosecution means a longer prison sentence. The mills of justice grind very slowly in Colombia. First, the prosecutor stipulates a sentence that the prisoner is allowed to challenge. But until that happens, years often pass. Thus, although most of the prisoners have not yet been sentenced, they sit behind bars for years and wait. The only way to reduce one's sentence is to work in the workshops. The sentence is reduced by the amount of time the prisoners work. The problem? There are too few for too many inmates. Thus, some hope to be transferred to other prisons where there are more workstations. But that doesn't usually happen until they're sentenced. Back to Diego. The new inmates are still being processed. They've been here for 4 hours. Now, it's time for a haircut. There are clear guidelines for the barber. The clipper must be set to 2 millimeters. The inmates have to get their hair cut regularly, or they do it themselves with smuggled razor blades. For once, an appropriate use of contraband. Then it's time to record the prisoner's personal information. Previous convictions, family, scars, tattoos. Everything is taken down.
I have a scar on my arm.
A burn?
No, it happened when I got a tattoo.
Where? Right arm?
Right.
Okay. What's it say?
My mom's name.
Rotate your arm. Turn it over.
The last step in the information gathering process, mugshots. For over 80% of the inmates, this is a familiar routine. It's not their first time in prison, and it probably won't be their last. In the cell block for sentenced inmates, it's all about surviving and somehow getting through the day. Nicholas takes the opportunity to rap out his frustration.
Calle, mundo de ilusiones, sentimientos, pasiones, adicto al peligro sin padrinos, humilde y sencillo, talento callejero con esfero, plasmo letras en cuaderno, con papel y lapicero, parcero, elocuente de mente, plasmo letras en tu mente con mensajes contundentes.
Nicholas raps about life in prison, weapons, and violence. But back in the corner, they don't only rap about violence. Practice fights take place there, with no weapons and no injuries. The inmates show off their fighting skills. But often things get out of hand.
If you have to fight, then you have to. Sometimes even with a knife. The camera doesn't reach back here, so this is where we do it.
Nicholas sustained several injuries in his last fight. Since then, his pinky has been stiff. There's no shortage of reasons to fight here.
The boy doesn't like black people. Then he started screaming in the yard, "I don't like blacks! Who should I fight?" I came into the yard and tried to stay calm and not worry about it. But the boy wouldn't leave me alone, so we fought.
Most altercations arise because of stealing, unpaid debts, drugs, or simply out of boredom. And no fight ends without injuries. Almost everyone here has a weapon: knives, scissors, needles. There's even a man in Nicholas's gang who is responsible for replenishing the supply of weapons. Wrapped up and camouflaged, the knives are barely noticeable. Many of the inmates don't just turn weapons on others, but also on themselves. Nicholas is one of them.
I'm bipolar, so I have radical mood swings. Seeing blood helps me keep myself under control. But I don't do anything to anyone else, just to myself. I used to go to a psychiatrist every month, and he gave me pills. But I don't have any anymore. I took them all.
After the medical examination in the hospital, the prisoners return to their cell blocks. And in this cell block, John Fernando is the boss. He oversees the routines, the dealing with drugs and weapons. He is supported by a 12-man crew. Here, he has the same role as Nicholas does in his yard. And the two men have known each other for a long time.
Told that he was right here. He was my boy too. He used to work for me too. But he fought with somebody else, somebody that is here, and he stabbed him really bad. The other kid is a little kid, but the little kid is so bad, you know. He like to stab people just for nothing, you know. So that's why they changed him. And he now is the boss over there. You see how he thinks. Here he have to listen to me. Over there, probably if I get there, I have to listen to him. Who knows? Or fight with him. Who knows? You know, but he's my friend still, but he's a bad guy. He got himself, he's crazy.
And this is the guy Nicholas fought with. The guy who doesn't like, quote-unquote, blacks. Many inmates wear their scars proudly. They show that they don't run away from fights. Things aren't going so well for Nicholas in his cell block at the moment. His dealings, the fact that he demands money and cigarettes from others, have been discovered. He and a member of his gang are even supposed to have threatened another inmate with a knife, and not for the first time. The prison has to investigate accusations like this.
I don't like your innocent attitude. You've got to clear this up with the boy. I don't want you to harm him again. If you do, you'll get solitary confinement. We've respected you. We respect your rights. But you don't respect the others. You don't give a shit. This changes now. If you do it again, and I don't care if you cut each other's ears off, you'll never get out of solitary.
Solitary confinement also means an extension of the sentence, or that the current sentence cannot be reduced. Constant misbehavior leads to power struggles between the guards and the inmates, and the inmates always get the short end of the stick.
There's a little problem, so we've got to behave.
The little problem has widespread effects. The head of discipline and the lieutenant make an announcement to all the prisoners. Today they're just talking, but acts of disobedience are often quickly met with a baton.
That's another issue. But security is paramount, and that's why we're here today.
Gentlemen, first, you've all been sentenced and will be here a long time. You should know that no one pays money for anything. Not to the guards, not to the administration, not to the inmates. I'll say this today nicely. for the first and the last time. No one may cheat or beat on others. No one.
Even if some of the inmates feel threatened by Nicholas and his gang, everyone is against the guards and the lieutenants. Instead of simply giving in and behaving peacefully, now they really start to get restless.
It's difficult. We have to check it out. It's the third time they've said it.
In such heated situations, things can also get dangerous for the guards and the prison employees. Many of the inmates are not shy about resorting to violence even with them. Nicholas wants to confront the people who ratted on him.
Everyone!
The first commandment, never tell on another inmate, has been broken. And there's a lot at stake for Nicholas.
I've called you here to talk about something. Several people have complained that we're extorting you. If you feel extorted because you have to pay 35 cents or a cigarette, then we'll stop cleaning. We won't do anything anymore, and we'll let the yard stay dirty. Why? Someone complained to the people at the top that we demand money or cigarettes. It's not for us, it's for the cleaners. But if you don't want to pay, then don't. And then we won't clean.
In the jail, 35 cents or cigarettes are worth a lot. Sometimes guards make deals with inmates in order to get information. Then it's easy to betray a fellow inmate.
I don't know who it was, but they're attacking me for the money you pay for cleaning.
Just like a president must take blame for his government, Nicholas must take the blame for his yard.
If I ask for money again, they'll put me on trial. And they don't clean for free.
There are official cleaners and people Nicholas chooses to clean. Then only the official cleaners will work.
The inmates fear solitary confinement, not only because of the extra prison time, but also because of the cell itself. The solitary confinement cells are like a prison within a prison. The light goes on here at 5 a.m. and goes off at 5 p.m. Daylight only shines through the small grate at the ceiling. Mattresses and blankets are removed from the cells during the day. Only the concrete slab remains. Twice a day, the inmates are allowed to take a walk accompanied by a guard in an isolated yard. The isolation itself is the worst punishment.
You get bored in the cell. You're in despair. You just want to beat your head against the wall. You're so desperate.
The solitary confinement cells also act as a kind of quarantine station for inmates with illnesses or wounds that have to heal. But some illnesses get worse here.
For example, this door fell off when a prisoner lit himself on fire in the cell. The prisoner lost control of himself. He's mentally ill and thought a devil commanded him to set fire to his cell.
The inmates are alone with themselves and their thoughts. That's the worst thing for them. New inmates have come to John Fernando's cell block today. It took 12 hours to process them. Diego is now officially a prisoner in the penitentiary. Although he recognizes faces from his last jail, he still has to learn how the inmates and the guards here tick.
Things are different here. It's not like the other jail.
After more than 12 hours, the newbies finally get something to eat. Bread, a banana, and avena, a Colombian oat beverage. But they don't have much time. Soon the prisoner's official representative will give them an introduction. This man is the guard's mouthpiece to the inmates. It's his job to explain the jail's rules to the new arrivals.
This is a community. We don't want any brawling, either with older or younger inmates. This is a place for coming together. Second, there is no stealing here, although there are thieves. We call them brooms. If you're a broom, you won't do well here.
Translation: stealing will get you beat up. Diego must now internalize these rules in order to avoid having problems. Most prisoners obey the rules in the beginning, but the longer they're here, the more daring they get. Like Nicolas. The upheaval has now calmed down somewhat and will soon subside entirely. Before the cell doors close for the evening, some of the inmates get medication. The doctor only distributes pills to inmates with a prescription and an official medical diagnosis. Many prisoners try to get medication this way, so a watchful eye is necessary. The prisoners are given insulin syringes, medication for flu symptoms, and antipsychotics. They're not prescribed to the individual needs of mentally ill patients, however. They're just tranquilizers. Every few months, a psychologist conducts examinations, but usually nothing changes. Too many inmates with different problems means excessive costs for the local government. Like every evening, the prisoners must now line up to be counted. This is how the guards make sure everyone is present, but it also lets them show the inmates that they're just numbers to them. The prisoners' day ends at 5 p.m. They have 10 minutes to get ready. For Diego, it's a new experience. In the other prisons, the inmates decided when they went to bed. But one thing will not change for Diego here.
It's better to be a loner in prison. A bad friend only causes problems. And I don't want any problems. So distance is good. That's how you stay away from problems. This prison is ultimately a community. You respect others so that they'll respect you.
We just want to stay alive and respect each other.
But everyone has their own definition of respect in prison. The cell doors stay closed for 12 hours. For grown men who are used to doing whatever they want outside of prison, this is hard to take. But that's exactly the point. It's a disciplinary measure.
The day's over. I'm exhausted. I hope I sleep well.
Another day gone. That's what everyone here thinks. One day of many still to come. Every day, altercations between inmates and guards. Every day, the hope of early release. Every day, worrying about families waiting on the outside. Every day, struggles with oneself and the fear of ending up back here, behind bars. Don Fernando still has 2 years on his sentence, and he is awaiting another trial. His family must continue to make do without him.
A month ago, when my wife told me that she was pregnant, I'm really happy because I wanted to have a kid. I wanted to have a little girl, and I think God gave me the opportunity, and that's nice, you know? That's my happiness, and that's it. Just trying to make this easier and get out of here and never come back, hopefully. That's right, that's all what I can tell you.
Nicolas continues to struggle with his bipolar disorder. He hopes to get out in 3 months, to see his mother, and then to finally take another path.
A friend on the outside and I want to do a song together.
Diego will spend 4 more years behind bars. His biggest wish, to be able to see his wife and grandmother again after 1 year. They all have one goal in common: to turn their backs on the hardships of prison life and to never come back here again. A goal that very few will achieve.
Ibagué, a city of 500,000 inhabitants in central Colombia. The South American country is the world's largest cocaine producer. Violence among drug gangs is high. Over 13,000 people were murdered in 2023 alone, making Colombia one of the top 15 countries with the highest murder rate. The result, Colombian jails are bursting at the seams, like Picaleña prison. It's the 5th largest in the country. Over 5,000 men and women are incarcerated here. It's a high-security bunker from which no prisoner has yet managed to escape. Strict rules, monotony, and arguments among the inmates determine life in one of Colombia's toughest prisons. It's 6 a.m. Picaleña prison is slowly coming to life. The shift begins for the guards. One of them is 27-year-old Palomino. He has been working in the prison for a year and a half. For security reasons, uniforms may not be worn outside the prison walls. Before starting their shift, the guards change in the prison dormitory. Palomino has 12 hours of duty ahead of him.
While I'm dressing, I always pray, just for myself. I pray to protect me from bad things happening, like a riot or something like that.
Palomino is in a hurry. Morning roll call is about to begin. If you're late, you'll be on duty at one of the unpopular posts that day.
Attention, gentlemen.
Everyone eagerly waits to see where they will be assigned. Every day, prison management reassigns the guards to the various posts. It's a measure designed to prevent bribery.
Fortunately, the block I'm assigned to today is rather quiet. I'm on duty there quite often. But you can never trust the peace. We always have to be alert and prepared for something to happen.
Picaleña prison consists of 2 areas. The entrance area with the administration, the dormitory for the guards, and a training area. Adjacent to it is the actual prison, surrounded by 3 6-meter-high fences. Within this area, there are 7 cell blocks. Each of the blocks is structured like a separate, smaller prison. Unit 1 is the oldest part of the prison, and also the largest block. Unit 2 has space for some 800 medium security prisoners. The isolation wing is also located here. Unit 3 is the high security area. Unit 4 is the women's wing. 450 female prisoners are serving their sentences here. Unit 5 is for prisoners serving medium sentences and remand prisoners. The so-called trusted inmates live in Unit 6. Unit 7 is the VIP block. Only former state employees and older prisoners are housed here. Anyone wishing to enter the interior of the prison must first pass the drug-sniffing dogs, including the guards.
We are searching for all kinds of narcotics. We've had visitors try to hide drugs in latex, such as condoms, or in toothpaste or coffee, and also in cleaning products. They do that to distract the scent of the drug-sniffing dogs. But that doesn't work. Our dogs always find the drugs.
Palomino and his colleagues are clean. Next comes the security check. Money, alcohol, knives, and cell phones are also strictly forbidden. Palomino is now on duty in Block 2, which is at the far end of the prison. Picaleña prison was built in 1982 and initially only consisted of Block 1. Gradually, more and more blocks were added. Block 2 is one of the most modern. Over 800 male prisoners are housed here in 5 units, known as pavilions. Inmates here are serving sentences ranging from 10 to 30 years. Together with 3 other colleagues, Palomino is now responsible for Pavilions 16 and 17.
205? No, 204.
Just 4 guards are responsible for over 400 inmates here. And they are almost exclusively murderers, drug dealers, and rapists. Palomino and his colleagues do not carry weapons. Their only means of defense is a baton.
Señores, buenos días.
The first step is the head count. The wardens also check that everyone is uninjured and in good health.
Listo. Bien. Gracias. Gracias.
We counted the prisoners. No one is missing. We do that every day. In both pavilions, everything is in order.
Each pavilion consists of a large inner courtyard, around which the cells are arranged. During the day, prisoners can move around freely in the inner courtyard. Barbed wire on the roofs and several surveillance cameras ensure an escape is impossible. All the furnishings, such as tables and benches, wash basins, and toilets, are made of metal. There's no chance of destroying them and turning them into weapons. The cells are spread over 2 floors. 4 to 5 prisoners share one of the 12 square meter cells. The furnishings are Spartan. Beds and the shelves for everyone are clumped together. The wash basin and toilet are in the middle of the room. There is no shower. A narrow window offers only a depressing view of the outside fences. 28-year-old Carlos has been sentenced to 27 years for murder, drug dealing, and fraud. Worse than being in prison is the loss of his family.
In the 3 years I've been here in prison, I haven't been able to meet my daughters. We had a few video calls, so at least I could talk to them and see their faces. But that was it.
His wife is also in prison. His wife's family has broken off all contact with him. He no longer has any contact with his own family either.
To be honest, I never really talk about it. It really gets to me. It hurts a lot. In a place like this, you don't talk about such feelings. That shows weakness, and under no circumstances should you show weakness here. But it makes me very sad. Very sad. These feelings are very strong. Knowing that I'm in my hometown, that my own family lives here, and that 3 years have passed without anyone visiting me.
The only support he receives is from his wife Lillian. She is serving time for accessory to murder just 200 meters away. The two are allowed to see each other regularly in prison and talk on the phone almost every day. His bed is full of her presence.
These are our names, Carlos and Lillian, and some encouraging words and fond memories. That's her, she said.
Married couples or even entire families in prison is nothing unusual in Colombia. Drug trafficking is often a family business. 8:30 a.m. Some of the prisoners are preparing to go to work.
Now we close all cells. This always happens after the head count.
This means everyone must leave their cells. If you don't have a place to work, you have no other choice but to hang around in the courtyard for the next few hours.
Closing the cells reduces the violence among the inmates, and it gives us a better overview of the prisoners and allows us to better control them. If they want to do something that's prohibited, they like to do it in secret in their cells. That's why we lock them.
The cells remain closed until the afternoon. A fifth of the prisoners go to work or school. Before they leave the pavilion, Palomino and his colleagues search everyone thoroughly.
We look for forbidden items such as drugs, knives, weapons, anything with the blade. Anything that is prohibited.
Prisoners from different pavilions are about to come together. This creates a potentially dangerous situation. Each block has its own workshop and classrooms. This means inmates do not have to leave the block. The wood workshop is in Block 2. The work here is intended to keep the prisoners busy and show them new possibilities for their time after prison. Here, too, every move is monitored. Only those who have done nothing wrong are given a job. 41-year-old Saul has been working here for 2 years. He used to be in the military and was sentenced to 18 years in prison for a so-called false positive for killing an innocent civilian.
Work is a way for me to deal with the monotony here. It's a chance to escape the boredom and forget that I'm in prison. That's the most important thing. When I'm here in the workshop and I'm working, I no longer think about the fact that I'm in prison and all that. That's what I like most about my job here.
There are no wages. Instead, the prison sells the goods prisoners produce. The inmates receive the proceeds, minus the cost of the materials. By working, they can also reduce their sentence. 3 days of work equals 1 day less spent in prison.
My work here helps my children. I have 3 children. I'm trying to put some of the money away to buy tools and start my own handicraft business later. That's my goal after prison. I definitely want to continue working as a carpenter.
He hopes to receive around $700 for his current work. He fully understands that working here is a privilege, especially since inmates in this shop handle sharp and pointed tools.
I don't see it as a weapon, I see it as a tool. It's just a working tool. Of course you can use it for fighting or something like that. I used to be a soldier. But I'm not here to cause stress, and I won't let anyone provoke me. I won't let anyone take away the opportunities I have here. I have a family. My goal is to get out of here as quickly as possible, away from this place.
However, it will be at least another 10 years before then, assuming Saul doesn't do anything wrong in the meantime. Those who do not have a job hang out in the courtyard. In Pavilion 16, Juan Jose ensures order and discipline. Each pavilion has a boss. He settles disputes, mediates as a human rights officer in the event of complaints between the prison and inmates, and organizes communal life.
Are you a cleaner?
For the backyard.
Yes, who else?
What do you want us to do?
Do me a favor. Pick up all that stuff, the towel, the shoes.
Yes, of course.
Pick it up. You know what? The gym should be well organized, please.
Juan Jose has been in prison for almost 8 years. The former businessman has gradually worked his way up to his position. One of the most important things he organizes, water distribution. All the water for the 200 inmates in the pavilion comes from these pipes, whether for drinking, showering, flushing toilets, or washing clothes.
I select people for the various tasks based on their character. They have to be responsible and reliable. It doesn't matter whether they're new or not. They don't get paid for it or anything. But they have a task, something to do, something to keep them occupied. If you want to get involved in this pavilion, we give you the opportunity to do so.
Even if, at first glance, the jobs look like menial tasks, they offer prisoners the opportunity to move up the hierarchy.
Previously, it used to be very different. Everyone just wanted to affirm their own interests, with their fists or a machete or something. That has now changed. Those who respect others are also respected. If a newcomer comes and thinks he has to destroy the peace and cause stress, whether out of boredom or because he's unhappy, then we make sure he goes somewhere else.
Constant boredom is one of the main reasons arguments erupt. If you don't have a job, you have few ways to keep yourself occupied. Games involving cigarettes are extremely popular. Carlos also tries to somehow get through the day.
Each day in prison is the same. It's a constant routine. We always get up at 6 o'clock, we are counted, we take a shower, and then we have breakfast. And so it goes on through the day. It's always the same. We try to keep occupied by playing board games and things like that.
Most of the men here used to be in a gang, Carlos included. His numerous scars and tattoos bear witness to this. He is used to solving problems through violence. This fact makes it all the more difficult for him and the others to keep a low profile here in prison.
Everything here is a challenge. The bathroom, the shower, the food. simply everything. We're always all together here. You always have to be careful and exercise restraint. If you're not in the rhythm of the prison, you're always going to be an outsider and therefore in danger. And you can't follow your impulses. Even if you pull yourself together, it still remains difficult. So many different characters come together here, and some of them are aggressive. It's a challenge every day.
In the event of a fight or attack among the prisoners, the guards have an alarm button at their station.
There is a control panel in the main station on which the alarm is displayed. Then a loud siren sounds. Everyone who's somehow available has to run to the station and help out.
Smoke gas canisters are available in every station for exceptional situations.
There is a strict protocol for this. We are only allowed to use them if the life or integrity of a prisoner is in danger, or that of a guard, of course, and only if there is no other option. The gas helps to break up large groups and get the situation under control.
First and foremost, Palomino and his colleagues never let the prisoners out of their sight to prevent this from happening. Escaping from Picaleña prison is virtually impossible. The entire prison is surrounded by 3 fences, each 6 meters high. From its watchtowers, guards can keep an eye on every corner. Civilian police patrol the perimeter of the prison, just in case someone does manage the impossible and gets over the multiple walls of barbed wire. The individual blocks are additionally secured with 3 rows of fencing and barbed wire. Each block also has its own watchtower. Block 7 is a very special block where no ordinary prisoners are housed. The block is for older prisoners and former civil servants. Most of them are convicted of corruption. Our camera team is not allowed into this cell wing, as no one is supposed to see what it looks like inside. The only thing to see is the block's workshop. This is where prisoners sew work clothes for their fellow inmates. He used to be a prison guard himself. 54-year-old John Carlos was convicted of drug smuggling and corruption. At first, it was a shock for him to be on the other side.
I was a bit scared at first. Fear is a human emotion. I think that's quite normal. When I was on my way here, it was a very queasy feeling. Of course, you wonder what will happen. How will they treat me? How will they receive me? I knew that if I was sent to prison and they put me in a normal wing, then my life would be in danger from the very first moment. No question about it.
He worked for 30 years in an even bigger prison than Picaleña. He was even an inspector, a rank just below the warden, until the lure of money became too great.
It was a bad decision that has brought me here. I failed. I made a mistake. I didn't think about the consequences. I took it too lightly. And now I have to pay for it. I was just too ambitious. If you're too ambitious, you take risks. At some point, these risks get bigger and bigger. You no longer think rationally, and you risk more and more.
Being behind bars himself also makes him see his former job in a different light. As a guard, he would do many things differently today.
Sería mucho más humano.
I would be much more human, reserved, much humbler.
Sería mucho más humilde.
Why?
Porque cuando uno está allá,
because when you stand on the other side of the bars, as a guard, you can hardly imagine how inmates suffer.
A rather late realization. There is also a complete block for women in Picaleña prison. Around 450 female prisoners are serving their sentences here, most of them for murder, drug trafficking, or both. Here too, everyday life is a constant struggle. The women are not particularly squeamish. 34-year-old Erica has been here for 8 years.
Sometimes we can solve problems by talking, but most of the time that doesn't help much. There is no tolerance. What happens then? We grab each other. We grab each other by the hair.
There is one word here, cinco. It means something like fist. The fists take away the anger.
Of course, we also try to talk to each other. And if not, then suddenly it starts. We use our fists. We fight. Or we stab. If you can't solve a problem any other way, then you stab.
You take a hairbrush or pencil and turn it into a weapon.
Just take the handle and attach a pointed blade to it.
However, when it comes to disputes, there is a golden rule.
If we see the guards coming, it's over immediately. As long as no one is seriously injured, there are no problems.
Otherwise, in the end, everyone will have to pay for it. It also applies to women. If you don't have a job, you have to spend the day in the courtyard and just kill time somehow. The women's cells are also only 12 square meters in size. Up to 6 women share a cell. Some of them sleep on mattresses on the floor. The bathroom consists of just a wash basin and toilet. Those who don't want to use one of the communal showers in the courtyard can shower over the toilet bowl.
We lay towels on the floor and then sit down on the toilet. We soap up and then get up to thoroughly scrub ourselves. Then we sit down again and pour water over ourselves, and it runs down the toilet. That's how you sit there. To wash your feet, we put a foot on here and then soap it up and wash it off.
Privacy is not an option. While almost everyone in Pavilion 23 has a prison sentence of over 20 years, things are a little quieter in the second pavilion for women. Around 80% of the prisoners here are on remand. Lillian, the wife of inmate Carlos, is also sitting here. Today is a good day for her. As a reward for going to school, the judge has confirmed that she will be released from prison sooner.
This document means a lot to me. It eases my concerns, at least a little, because now I can see my family and children again sooner. They deducted 528 hours of my sentence.
That amounts to 22 days. It doesn't sound like much, but in prison, every day counts. She got 13 years for being accessory to the murder committed by Carlos.
We did it together. I've never accused him of that, and I never will. I told him this many times. We're both here because we both did it. We're both guilty.
Lily and Carlos have been a couple for 9 years. Despite being in prison, he is still the man of her dreams.
It's not easy because of the distance. But after everything we've been through, we're both still alive. We'll get through this, and then we can move on with everything we had planned, with our dreams and our love. And I ask God to give us the opportunity to get out of this, to move forward, to be able to give our daughters a great future, to be able to be with them and fill them with love.
Whether she still sees it that way when she gets out remains to be seen. Carlos will still have at least another 10 years ahead of him. Natalia is the guard in charge today. She knows only too well how high the potential for aggression is among the women. This is why she and her colleagues regularly carry out unannounced searches. Searches are randomly conducted by the female guards.
They often try to hide marijuana or other drugs in their shoes, or some sharp objects they make themselves that they can then try to attack other inmates with. They most often hide things in their shoes.
The rules are strict. Lighters with spindles are prohibited. With a little skill, you can build a kind of metal saw from the coiled wire that produces sparks. The guards always stay together during the search. They know only too well that the prisoners are not to be trusted.
Hey, stop it. Get your hand out of there.
This prisoner seems to be trying to hide something. And indeed, Natalia finds a pair of scissors.
The scissors are confiscated. She could attempt to hurt another prisoner with them.
Natalia is alarmed. She now takes a much closer look at the prisoner. Is she hiding something else?
It could have contained alcohol or something else that's forbidden.
But despite a thorough search, she finds nothing except the scissors. After an hour, the search is completed. Natalia shows why she confiscated the harmless-looking craft scissors.
The women made this themselves from a pair of scissors. One prisoner used them to attack another inmate. The fight happened about a week ago, and the victim was injured in the ear. The attacker actually wanted to slash her face, but she only caught her on the ear and arm. Fortunately, we were able to separate the two quickly.
An argument between two prisoners can quickly turn into a mass brawl, or even a riot. By now, it's lunchtime. Each block has its own kitchen. Three meals a day are prepared there. Meat is served at least once a day. The inmates do the cooking. One of them is 43-year-old Gustavo. He has been behind bars for 17 years.
This is one of the best jobs in this prison. Actually, in any prison in Colombia. If you work in the kitchen, you always have enough to eat. And we're busy all day. The pay here is also good. You not only get a reduction to your sentence, you also get paid money. We earn the legal minimum wage here in Colombia. That's great.
That's around $350 a month. In prison, that amounts to a small fortune. Gustavo used to be a teacher until he was sentenced to 27 years for rape. In Colombia, it's a crime that's harshly punished.
I used to make eggs for my children, and occasionally for lunch. Here is where I learned how to cook for 1,000 people, and quickly too. It wasn't easy to learn. It's a large kitchen here. I also had to learn how all the equipment worked, for example.
He is now an absolute professional and already has plans for his time after prison.
I'm thinking about opening my own small restaurant. I enjoy cooking. I know I'll never be able to go back to my job as a teacher, so I think that's a good idea for a fresh start.
In 5 to 6 years, he could be released on parole and realize his dream. Before the food is served, a civilian cook checks the taste and temperature once again. The prison management attaches great importance to quality, as the food is an important factor in the prisoner's mood. The prisoners eat in the block's huge dining hall. Leftover food in the pavilions would quickly attract pests. Here, too, every movement of the prisoners is strictly monitored. To avoid arguments, everyone gets exactly the same amount. Food is eaten from plastic containers, another safety measure. Of course, not everybody is totally happy with the food.
The food is sometimes a little cold, or not quite tender. And the portions are very small. It doesn't fill you up. We are left hungry. But we still enjoy the food.
There are no supplements. If you have a job or a family who sends money, you can buy extra food in the prison store.
Let's go, go! Back to the pavilion, come on!
The prisoners reluctantly return to the confines of the pavilion. In the afternoon, prisoners in Pavilion 16 head to the exercise yard. They are allowed onto the sports field once a week. The prisoners are searched beforehand. It is difficult for the guards to keep an eye on everyone on the large sports field, and Palomino actually makes a find: a drug pipe. The owner is now in a lot of trouble.
A discovery like this can lead to a change in the security level. They are then moved to a different block or even placed in solitary confinement. Or they simply lose certain privileges. That almost always happens.
The prisoners have 1 hour. Most of them use the time to let off steam. Soccer is very popular. Everything looks peaceful, but Palomino knows it can't be trusted.
We have to be very vigilant out here, because the main entrance to the block is at the back.
There is a high risk that prisoners will seize the opportunity and try to escape via the nearby main entrance. Carlos is completely in his element. He played for a soccer club as a youngster. His chances of a professional career were not bad at all. But then money and drugs became more important.
It was, of course, my dream to become a great footballer. And if I had the chance, I'd still love to become one. It's still my passion. To be honest, sometimes I still dream of being a great footballer or a great goalkeeper. Maybe I'll get another chance.
Since Carlos will be almost 50 when he is released, it is a rather unrealistic dream. But for the moment at least, soccer allows him and the others to forget everyday life in prison. The women are also granted yard time. They are allowed outside twice a week. And, as we'll see in a moment, they use this time for dating.
Inside in the courtyard, you often feel very cramped. It's confining. It's terribly loud, and there are so many people there that it's hard to think. You can't really be carefree. I feel much freer out here. I can sit down and think, talk, and even be sad sometimes. Here, I don't have the pressure of constantly being watched by others. It's different here.
But for the women, the most important thing is that the courtyard is used for a kind of dating spot. From here, they have a clear view of Block 5. They use a specially developed sign language to communicate with the male inmates there. Carolina explains how the sign language works.
For example, we use letters. This is an A, this is a B, this is a C, this means D, and this is an E. This means I have a favor to ask. This is a heart, and these are many, many, many kisses.
Carolina has been in Picaleña prison for a long time. She uses every second in the yard to chat.
I'm talking to my husband Fabian right now. I said hello to him. Hello, my love. And another heart. I said I love you. I really love you. We got together 3 years ago and got married. We got to know each other through the court chat here.
A prison love story. A lot has changed for Carolina as a result.
I'm very happy to have him. You're under constant pressure here in prison. Most everyone here is very lonely. Most have no one they can talk to. I have him. I share my worries with him. We laugh, and we also talk on the phone about everything. In 12 years, the first time I think I fell really in love with someone.
Then it's time for her to say goodbye for today.
Ladies, time's up. We're going back.
It will be another 2 days before the women will be allowed outside again. The cell closes at 4 p.m.
Ladies, head count.
Reluctantly, the women follow the instructions. Natalia and her colleagues count the prisoners one last time for the day. Then everyone goes back to their cramped cells. They won't be unlocked again until 6 o'clock the next morning. 14 long hours and 12 square meters, and without any privacy. Erica tries to stay occupied by drawing. She sends the pictures to her daughters or swaps them for other things in prison. The 34-year-old is serving time for drug dealing and murder. Her story is typical of many in here.
I come from a neighborhood where there are drugs everywhere. A lot of drugs, a lot of crime. And you see people getting killed all the time. I then became a member of a gang. I mainly did it for the money. And I liked it. I always wanted more money. I sold more, and I said to myself, come on, Erica, do that too. Kill people for money. It was only here that I understood what I was really doing. I truly wish I could turn back time and change a lot of things.
Erica has decided to change her life, primarily because of her 3 daughters.
I keep thinking about the time after prison. I know I'll never be able to go home again. I still have too many unpaid bills there. That means I'll have to go somewhere else and start all over again. I'll look for a job. I don't know, in a restaurant, in a bakery, or a supermarket. In any case, I want to be a good role model for my daughters.
With good behavior, she can be released in around 6 years. The men are now also locked up in their cells. While many of them are thinking about their time after prison, Carlos has no plans yet.
I don't really think much about the time after prison, and I've kind of forgotten about these 3 years I've been living here. I try to live every day as if it were my last. I don't count the days. I don't count how long I've been here, nor how long it will be before I get out. It doesn't make sense. My sentence is far too harsh for that.
So far, there hasn't been much in the way of discernment or the willingness to change.
What depresses me the most is that I can't fulfill my responsibility as a father. That's what bothers me the most. It really hurts. But I don't regret what I've done outside. It was necessary. I don't regret it because I had to show who I was and what my place was.
Carlos will spend at least another 20 years behind bars without seeing his children grow up. As night falls, things slowly become quiet again in Picaleña prison. Until the next morning, when a new day begins in one of Colombia's toughest prisons.